that comes at us every time we open up a browser on our laptop.
Right. I only listen to Breitbart. That's all. That's the only place I will ever get my news. So.
Well, they have editors and
yes.
professionals with accreditation from Trump University. So
that's good.
Prestigious.
Very prestigious, yes.
Going off of the news sources that you were saying, I definitely try and vary my sources, especially on the spectrum. When you know that there's one particular one, I think you have to do your due diligence in terms of what's out there in the media because everyone has access to it. Everyone has sort of a microphone, a soapbox to which they can obviously, say the things that they want to say now. And some people will garner an audience, but I think it's important that you try and take these different sources and really try and parse out what you believe to be the actual real sort of fact. Almost in like the scientific method, taking it from different sources, putting it through the process, reviewing things, and then, sort of testing those hypotheses. But going off of what you were saying, I definitely like to use Wall Street Journal. I like that a lot because their forefront isn't necessarily more politics, it's business, and then politics, I think, takes kind of a second step to that. But also, too, I really like Reddit. It's moderated, so you can't just really put anything on there and expect it to get views and to get votes. But the users are the ones who are participating in the moderation process, and they're either voting up that particular news source or voting it down. And then there are also comments for discussion within those links as well, and that will really tell you the veracity of whether or not it's a good sort of source to use. It's a valuable source, I think, for getting news, and I tend to use that first because I know that it's not a corporation that is responsible for driving people there to buy that particular piece of news. It's for the people, I think, and that's something I like particularly. So if you haven't looked it up, I definitely recommend it, reddit.com.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I'm so glad I'm listening to this podcast because now I'm learning stuff. So that's awesome, Marshall.
Yeah.
And there can be media outlets that have like crazy stuff in them from time to time too, including maybe some that you've already mentioned. But that doesn't mean it's all worthless, and that doesn't mean it doesn't present challenging ideas for us to re-examine our assumptions. I think one of the tough things is that you want to be open to new ideas. You want to be challenged with new things and things you haven't thought of. But it's also true that you don't wake up in the morning, every morning, and completely re-examine your entire worldview. I don't know about you, but right. I could never get anything done that day because every day I'd start all over again with a blank slate. And so the fact is you do take things as assumptions. You don't re-examine all of your assumptions every day. You can't possibly do that. So you do kind of fix on a worldview, but you still have to be willing to adjust it. So how much flexibility should you have? Here's my answer. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
Enough, but not too much.
Makes sense. I've also read, too, that the more someone tries to persuade you of a certain viewpoint or a radical change in what you already think, it actually has the opposite effect, and it sort of makes you more entrenched in what you already believe already. So at some point, there are diminishing returns to try and change people's minds about things, but I think the best thing that you should be trying to do is presenting the most objective type of message with facts that are verified and let people decide for themselves. And if you just continue to do that, let your work product speak for itself and let the process and how you deliver that to people shine, then you're going to have people coming to view it.
I've always believed, and I always believed when I was litigating cases, that you need to let the judge or the jury at least have the impression that they have figured it out themselves, as opposed to having you jam it down their throats.
Sure.
Now, obviously, you do need to be an advocate, but there is an awful lot of overwrought, high-strung prose in news outlets and in legal briefs. And I think that people, particularly people who've had a variety of life experiences, can kind of smell that when they see it.
Sure.
You say, this person is yelling at me just a little bit too loud. Maybe I should be suspicious of what's going on there. I was going to say there's an interesting piece on the radio that I was listening to on the way over here about foreign manipulation of media in this country, and we've heard a lot about that and how much of that is going on. But it's what's coming out is that it's very sophisticated, and that it takes advantage of the notion that we tend to like news and information that confirms worldviews that we already have, and so there's this great art that I gather the Russians are very good at, of packaging their message inside an envelope of things that are really going to be attractive to people, and that they'll associate themselves with, and it's from time to time really, really phony.
Right.
That's kind of the problem I have, like with Reddit, I guess, because even though it is sort of curated by users, you do have to select sort of which subreddits you are going to walk into, and in doing that, you're like starting a community already of like-minded people, and I think it does have a tendency to sort of spiral into just crazy opinions of stuff that people just build off of each other, but it just kind of gets lost.
Kind of like an echo chamber.
I don't know.
There is a lot of
break out,
groupthink or
exactly.
hive mind, I think, and that
it's
comes
pretty
with
scary.
any sort of community of people, no matter where you're at. I mean, you
I don't
look
know,
at
though.
law school for an example. That's a lot of groupthink and hive
It's
mind.
a lot of groupthink and hive mind. And I think, I don't know, when people talk about their attempts to kind of find the objective truth and parse through a bunch of different sources and things like that, I think it's really valuable and it's something that people need to do. But I think we also need to recognize how fallible our own minds and memories are, and that objective truth often is like a fluid concept anyway. We were talking about confirmation bias just now. I mean, the data for that is really strong. And I mean, it goes so far as to show that you can fully implant false memories in people's minds, like neurologically normal people. That can be done. So I think it's a really hard job. I think it's just my point, because you have to monitor yourself while monitoring what you perceive to be objective reality at the same time.
I mean, I think that's really insightful, and it was one of the, and I'm glad you put your finger on that, because Marshall, when you were talking, I think one of the things that you were emphasizing implicitly is that this is actually work. I mean, it's actually hard to claw through it and to pull it apart, and you can't just kind of let it flow over you and think that you're going to get anything from it. One of the things that we've been working on at the ACLU is to make people more knowledgeable and to provide them with information about political races that affect our issues. Primary example being county attorney races. In Minnesota, all 87 county attorneys are up for election. Mm-hmm. Some of them have got opponents, some of them don't, but they're all on the ballot. Many people don't even understand that the county attorney is an elected position.
Right.
I would go with most.
Okay,
I think most
fine.
is a safe bet.
All right.
Well, I know also, like, for judges, I mean, a lot of times you get your ballot, you see all the traditional, people you vote for, senator, house, even going into, like, state house. But then you flip it over and you see all of these judges, and I think the common person, the ones who are lawyers and not in law schools, look at that and they're like, I have no idea who any of these people are. I'm not going to vote for any of them. Is it mostly, do you think it's mostly either people who are very ingrained in politics, or is it just a lot of attorneys voting for other attorneys out there?
There is an enormous amount of debate about the best way to choose judges.
Yeah.
As law students and lawyers know, you've got federal judges who are appointed for life, mm-hmm. And in Minnesota we've got state court judges who are, in theory, appointed by the governor, but only when there is a vacancy in the middle of a term, and then it's a matter of running for re-election. And there are so many, particularly those of us that live in Hennepin County. You've got 70 or 80 judges in Hennepin County. And the list of judges that is up for election is just huge. Are you really going to research all those? Most people won't do it. Right. So the election system is not a perfect system either, because one of the problems when you've got so few votes in total for any given office, then if some particular interest group, good or bad, has got a campaign going or can really push out constituents and its supporters, you can get some kind of oddball results because there are so few votes that it takes to influence the election. So our system's got flaws in it too, which is not to say that I've got an idea as to how to change it in a good way.
There
But
goes our
people are
next
struggling with that.
Yeah, our
People are
next
struggling
question
with
was, can you fix this?
that.
Yeah, you know.
It was. I actually wrote a paper on this while I was still in law school about different judicial selection processes, and I don't remember how I did on it, but it was. The conclusion was it was all messed up.
Yeah, well, we were
conclusion.
talking recently. I think Mitch brought up the aging out of the federal bench and how there's a large percentage of judges who are well past retirement age, and that when cognitive issues appear, there isn't really any sort of system to assess them, or it's kind of put on their colleagues to gently push them out. And I don't know, have you had any experience with that in your career?
All of the judges that I've appeared in front of have been totally brilliant at all times.
For the record.
Yeah.
I am going to say this, and I don't know how this is going to sound. People who are practicing law just in Minnesota, I think, often find it easy to lose sight of the fact that actually we do have, and you can take this for what it's worth, a really stellar judiciary in the state of Minnesota, both federal and state. And I say that in all seriousness. You travel around the country, and there is more weirdness that goes on in more places.
Wisconsin. We're looking at you, Wisconsin.
in more state and federal courts in different places. So we really are very fortunate here. I do know of situations in which colleagues have had to go into somebody's office and gently suggest that maybe it's time to do something different. I know of one judge, when the clerks leave their position, the judge goes to them and says, "You need to promise me that after I go on senior status, that if you see something that is of a concern to you, you need to promise you will come in and talk to me about it." And I found that very impressive. And I know that judge, and I know that judge is very, very serious about it. I also know that judge, as far as I can tell, doesn't have a darn thing to worry about, and is not likely to for a long time.
Yeah, and I think I brought that up mostly because, like we said, the judiciary is getting much older, and the problem is technology is changing so fast. And so with that, I mean, obviously, as you get older, even I can tell this as getting older, technology becomes more and more complex and harder to understand. And so that was just kind of one of the thoughts I had on when we were talking about technology the other day.
Yeah, but there are judges who stay sharp and
Absolutely.
Very effective for a long time. There was one federal judge in Kansas who reached the age of, I believe, 104 and 105,
Wow.
and was still in active service, senior status, but still in active service.
Yeah, well, and you do get into complicated areas of, I think, ageism concerns and things like that, because, yeah, the truth is there's no one-to-one correlation between aging and cognitive decline. It's just more likely to happen. I think it's just that they're in such a unique position of power with the lifetime appointments that it becomes an issue.
The next topic we wanted to discuss, and that we've talked many times on here about, is some recent news with Brett Kavanaugh. I think Abby called him Kavanaugh, right? That was Hannah, right? One of you.
Kavablah? I don't know. I think we had
Kavanaugh.
Clearly there's fodder there, so
Yes.
run with it.
But anyway, so what is your general view on Brett Kavanaugh as a judge who is looking to get kind of the highest seat on in the land in terms of the judiciary?
Yeah, it has been ACLU policy for a long time, and I need to start out this way, that we do not support or oppose candidates for elective office or candidates for appointive office. So the ACLU has not, to date, taken a position as to whether Judge Kavanaugh should or should not be confirmed as an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, period, full stop. Mm-hmm. His record as a judge indicates that he is hostile to vast swaths of the agenda that we feel is important for the American